Hi, I'm Mario Evon, and you're listening to Talk Truth, a weekly edutainment podcast discussing the things that most people are afraid to, but from a Jamaican perspective. From relationships, sex and sexuality, to the ins and outs of entrepreneurship, in this space we speak about almost anything with the intention to inspire, educate, entertain, and create a fair and balanced space where your truth shall become your power and set you free. Welcome to this next episode of Talk Truth, and I'm here with a wonderful guest who goes by the name of Tonille Watkis. And Tonille right now is based in the US, but she is an actress, a drama teacher, and the reigning Miss Planet Jamaica. Tonille, welcome to Talk Truth.
Thank you so much, Mario. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, they don't know that a few weeks ago you were the one interviewing me.
This is very true, very true. So now the tables have turned, but I'm very excited.
The tables have turned. I'm excited to have you here too. And just before we go into what we're going to talk about, I want to play a little game with you. Let's play a game of this or that. So I'm going to say a few things, and I want you to instinctively choose the one that you most align with. All right?
Okay.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
That's smart. Beach or river?
Beach. Definitely the beach.
You like sea instead of cold water? Is a warm and cold thing?
Yes, exactly. It's a warm and cold thing.
Oxtail or stew peas?
Well, I no longer eat pork, but I used to love stew peas when I did. So stew peas.
So stew peas without the pig's tail now. And
it's not the same. It's not the same. But
it's not the same, right? And let's do ice cream. Rum and raisin or pistachio?
Rum and raisin.
All right. I totally agree with your choices. All right. So that was our quick this and that. But today we're going to have a conversation about identity and cultural duality, which is something I figure you connect with a lot. So first of all, let's tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where were you born and why do you have cultural duality?
Yes. So I was born in Connecticut, in Hartford, Connecticut, and I live in Bloomfield now. And I always grew up with a sense of cultural duality because my parents are from Jamaica. They're from Clarendon. And as I was growing up, I mean, I live in a community where there are very many Jamaican Americans around me. But in particular, I spent pretty much every summer of my childhood and most of my winter holidays, Easter holidays, living in Clarendon with my grandmother. And so it really taught me to see Clarendon as my second home and to have a strong connection to my roots and my culture as a Jamaican.
Yeah, this is always a conversation I wanted to have, and I've had with maybe one other person. And I mean, I'm going straight into the meat of it. How do you think it's different being connected to Jamaica through parents and through your experiences with Jamaica versus growing up in Jamaica? And I guess maybe you wouldn't know exactly what growing up in Jamaica is like, but you would have experienced so much of it, you know?
Right.
What are your views on it? Yeah.
From my seeing and hearing about my cousins' experiences, especially while they were going to school, I know that, school would have definitely been a different experience for me. And some of my family members were born in the U.S. and did live and go to school in Jamaica for a time. So I do know that their experiences were different because of that. So I feel like, especially because children spend so much time in school, no matter where you are, you spend a lot of time in school. It's really a huge part of your upbringing. And so because that's really a part of your molding and shaping, I did miss that part, if I wasn't going to school in Jamaica. But I will say that I definitely gained a great appreciation for where my family comes up, especially leaving, cold and more city-like Connecticut to go to a more rural area like, where we live in Clarendon was different for me.
Right. And you know what's ironic? I think that life can be a little unfair where identity is concerned, because sometimes you may even be more exposed to Jamaican culture than Jamaicans living in Jamaica, which is the weird catch-22 of the thing, because your parents, I think, would probably have felt a duty
Mm.
to expose you to their lives.
Mm. And also, I find that to be true. But also, living in the area where I live, where there are a lot of Jamaican Americans and Caribbean Americans overall, and a country like America that's considered a melting pot of many people from different cultures, people really cling very much to their home identity when they're here,
Right,
because
right.
everyone feels the need to. That's how they best identify and define themselves. So I feel like we almost have even more of a strong cultural connection because of that, because we're trying to keep as much of our culture and our roots alive for ourselves.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I am born and raised here, but I went to Berklee College of Music for 4 years, I believe. And then I lived in Canarsie in Brooklyn for a year.
Ah,
And I found that when I was in the US, even though I was back and forth so much, I did have this intense desire to cling to my Jamaicanness, because you can find how possibly easily or quickly that can dissipate if you allow it to.
right, right.
You-
I
we-
think that was always something that my family was very well aware of,
Yeah,
very, very aware of, growing up, especially because like now I think is a different time, and later on in the later 2000s, especially, was a different time. I feel like then it was more embraced for you to be, Caribbean American. But
right,
earlier on, especially in my childhood at the time, I mean, it was very rare um, for me to be in school with other children who were making it known that they were of Jamaican parentage. We were more trying to fit in with what
right.
Americanness was like. And I remember even being in middle school when I would be leaving every summer for a couple months and being upset because my birthday was in the summer. My friends could never come to my parties. I missed my middle school graduation because we went to Jamaica before it
You were in
happened. And
Jamaica,
so,
right?
yes, I was in Jamaica. And so I felt like I missed out on a lot of the summer activities and things that my friends would do because I was always away. And especially because, all of my friends here thought like I was going to a hotel, or, they thought I was going to a resort. And I'm like, no,
Right.
I'm literally going to the country. I'm going to go, be in the bush. Like, so
Yeah,
it was
this is not coochie. This is not Wi-Fi.
right.
Yeah,
But I will say
that's
that
that's interesting. Yeah.
I definitely gained a huge appreciation for it. But I think even for a while, when I was younger, it wasn't always the thing that I necessarily wanted to do, not because I didn't love Jamaica and love seeing my family when I would go, but just because it's like being torn between two experiences. I didn't get to spend the school year with my family in Jamaica, and I didn't get to spend the summer with my friends here.
Yeah, I like the path you're leading me down. Which would actually, I want to ask you, how would you define identity in your words?
Mm. I think that identity can be so complex. I think it can be fluid. I definitely don't think it's black and white. And that's something I learned even more as I was growing up. I wrote a one woman play. It's called No Boxes Allowed. And it's all about the different ways that I try to try on different identities. And so I talk about how I tried to try on like the Black American identity and claim,
Right.
you know, um, or take some claim to like what it meant to have a Southern history, like most of the Black Americans whose family have been here for centuries, um, and how that
Right.
didn't really fit me, and how I went on to try to maybe fit in with the Spanish Caribbean Americans because they were so prominent in the middle school that I went to that I started to learn Spanish and kind of get mixed in with their cultures. And I do have a fond appreciation for their music and their culture and their food. But it just didn't
Yeah.
fit me until I really stopped fighting that and started owning more of who I am through where my family comes from. And so I talk about all of this in the play, and it's a wonderful, like, almost a memoir to my mother and our family and where we come from.
Right. And also how you have experienced that as well.
Yes, yes, and I think
Well,
it's
this is a good
very.
say. Hmm.
Sorry, I was going to say it's very funny to me to recall like these moments when I'm trying to try on these different identities and see what works for me, and see almost what's better for me and what would make me more fit in with where I am and
And
where
I'm
I
sure you
am.
probably have different accents and different outfits and different things to represent each.
Oh yes, absolutely,
Did,
absolutely.
well, it's a good segue to let people know that you actually studied acting. So you have a BFA in acting and you have a diploma in classical acting as well. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to acting.
Yes. So um, originally, I had always been a creative kid. My mom always enrolled me in a dance program from when I was younger. And so through dancing, I discovered musical theater and the power of theater and what it could do, and how good I felt to transform into a character just for a while, even because I was always so expressive. And I guess that was probably because I was at school trying on different identities. So it made me feel good to be in a place where I could be on stage and allowed to do it. And from there, it
Right.
just kind of blossomed. Originally, I went to college to be a doctor. I went to be a pediatric cardiologist. That was supposed to be my goal. But while I was in my first year of school, I realized, well, I'm terrible at chemistry, and it just didn't make my heart sing. And so I found that one way I was able to really feel good and feel confident about school was through the theater program at the school where I was. And that's how I started to pursue it. I just took my time, started taking it as an elective, and the director of the department told me that, it's clear that I had a calling and I was on a path to become an incredible actress. And so that's what led me to where I am now.
I'm glad that you honored that flow into doing what you love. But the next thing I would ask you is having Jamaican parents who tend to be very traditional. Were they supportive of you being an actress, and were they the ones that suggested medical school?
Well, yes, my mother and my family always suggested medical school. They either said, doctor or lawyer, because they said I was a very good orator, and so they,
Right,
they figured that I would be very convincing,
right.
convincing at trying cases. But eventually, I think I did win them over. I mean, partially because I withdrew from school without telling anyone, and I just came home, the summer after my first year and said, hey, I withdrew and I applied for a theater department.
Oh
um,
wow! So they didn't have much choice in this,
no, they did not
but
know.
they
They
could
were
have kicked you
very
out though, but they
upset.
didn't.
Right, right,
I'm sure.
exactly, exactly. So they were very upset at first to find out, but my family has a very strong faith. We have a very strong faith and belief in God. And so, I talked to my mother, and as my grandmother always said something that stuck with me. And I guess this is one of those moments where her words came right back to her. But I said, Mama, you tell me what I feel, can and feel. So, if this is not it, if this is not the path, then, maybe it'll
Then
disappear
it
into
will
thin air
reveal
and nothing
itself.
will
Yeah,
happen. But
disappear exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if it is for me, then, I'd love to follow this through and see where it can go.
Where do you see it going? Where would you want it to go? I'm a musician, so I know when people ask me that question, I tell them all sorts of things. But we do define our own successes. So for you, it could be anything. Where do you see it going?
Right. Well, I originally I would say I saw it going in I would say a very linear path. Like I never imagined I would be where I am exactly right now. At the time,
Mm-hmm.
pageantry was not a part of this vision. At the time, my one woman play was not a part of this vision. And that ended up being one of the biggest blessings yet for my career, because I really penned the show just as a requirement to graduate, I needed to do my capstone, which is like a thesis at the end of my 4 years
Right.
to move forward and matriculate through the program. And
Yeah.
instead, it ended up being my tool that I used along with pageantry and my platform to help me to meet all of these different people at professional theater companies. And so now I'm at a place where I have the opportunity to work with Tony Award-winning theater companies as a teaching artist, and I get to teach drama through these companies, and I also get to act and as well and teach their programming. But for me, it doesn't just stop here. I want to go on and do more television, more film. I would love to be
Yeah.
a representation, an honest representation, not just of Black women, but also Jamaican American women, because honestly, I think that we deserve better accents on screen, more authentic
Yeah.
accents
Yeah.
on
I think
screen.
so too. Right.
And
Right.
also stories that talk about our experience, because often we are a marginalized community within the Black community, and so often even our stories are forgotten.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned pageantry and how nicely it strangely tied into acting, or maybe accidentally did. And I also noticed an intentionality in being in pageants that connect to Jamaica. You are now Miss Planet Jamaica. Tell me about Miss Planet Jamaica first, and then dial it back to the other pageants, Miss Black USA, Miss Supernatural, and how that ties into the whole cultural identity thing.
Yes, absolutely. So, fortunately, I got the opportunity to become Miss Planet Jamaica through my former pageant director for Miss Supranational Jamaica,
Mm-hmm.
and he selected me because the Miss Planet International director was seeking. There was a transition of directorship, and so he was
Mm-hmm.
seeking a representative for Jamaica in the pageant that's coming later this year, which was to happen last year,
Mm-hmm.
but because of COVID, did not happen. But because of
Yeah.
that, my director reached out to me because he just knew that I would be one of the perfect people who would be ready to take on the role and to represent Jamaica well on the international stage. And I thank him for that, not just for giving me that opportunity, but for giving me the opportunity twice to wear that sash across my chest on an international stage. Because what could make you more proud and more prideful than to wear your country's name across your sash? And so I'm very thankful for
Right.
that experience. Prior to that, I did compete virtually for Miss Supranational Jamaica in 2018, and
Mm-hmm.
fortunately, the organization and directors chose me to represent Jamaica in Poland, and that was an incredible experience, especially because I had
Yeah.
my mother with me, and so it was one of those moments that felt absolutely incredible to reach this far. My mother saying that who would have thought that from Moko Clarendon we would get to this point and be representing
Right.
Jamaica in Poland.
Right.
So
Right. In Poland, right? It's a big deal.
yes,
Congrats.
exactly. So that was incredible.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate to have been able to have the experiences in pageantry that have shaped my life thus far. Even with Miss Black USA before that, that was my first time winning a national
Mm-hmm.
pageant, and that was incredible as well. And fortunately, during my reign as Miss Black USA, the very last appearance I did before giving up my crown was a mission trip in Jamaica with the Jamaica Ambassador Programs. And so I got to spend a
Yeah.
week residing in Mobay and working with children in Flower Hill at the basic school there, where they have a summer program. And I used theater and arts integration to teach students reading and communication skills through theater.
That must have been a enlightening experience, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. And so incredibly rewarding and fulfilling to be able to give back in that way, but also
Yeah.
to represent, the U.S. in Jamaica in that way, because prior to my reign as Miss Black USA, even though the pageant had been around for 30 years at that point, there had never been another Jamaican American woman to win the crown. And so it was incredible just to have that connection and to be able to bring my reign to Jamaica, thanks to the organization, and be able to do this incredible work with these students.
Right. I was going to say the pageants must continue to give a connection back to home, or maintain a connection home. You would agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Definitely. And I think, especially with pageants like these, where we have the potential to have such a great impact and influence, it's important that, the greater community sees what we are able to do, because, that is where the inspiration, the opportunity for inspiration lies. It's in being able to directly influence and impact youth with our platforms.
Right. And mentioning impacting youth with the platform, tell me a bit about Learn for Life.
Absolutely. So Learn for Life is my platform, and it is an initiative designed to help me to address social justice issues and really use theater and the arts and education in order to eradicate social injustices, especially in that living in the United States, we have a lot of injustice, surrounding racial issues at the moment. And not at the moment, it's been happening for a long time, but now is a great
Yeah,
time, I
always,
think,
right?
to address,
Yeah.
right. And I think now is a great time to really address that. It's been something that I've dedicated my work to as an artist and educator for the past 7 years, and so I'm happily able to connect my pageant work to my own platform and advocacy in order to fulfill those goals.
Yeah. So, Tonille, where you find time to do that now?
So fortunately, it's actually my work. And so before it was a lot to juggle because I wasn't working directly in theater earlier on in my career. But over time, I've actually worked to the point where I've been able to work with the theater companies that I work with and develop programming that allows us to have civic discussions about racial injustice, about sexism, about violence towards women. And so I've been able to work through them in creating the programming and having these kinds of conversations, teaching these lessons and engaging students through this curriculum virtually in schools this year. So already this year, I have worked with about, I'd say 70 schools. 70 schools so far in spreading these messages.
Wow. Wow. What does a week in the life of Tonille look like?
Oh, it looks insane. It's all over the
I'm
place.
sure.
I am.
Is it scheduled? Is it strictly scheduled, or not really?
For the most part, yes, only because I have so much going on, with virtual classes, auditions, sometimes some traveling is necessary for, commercial bookings and things like that. So because of that, I do keep everything to a tight, schedule, but it's great. I won't complain because I did pray to God and ask God to be booked and busy. And so now that it's happening, I am so
Right. Yeah, we want to remain booked and busy. Myself, I'm not complaining. So like you, not like you, but I ended up doing medicine, as you know.
Yes.
But I went to Berkeley and did music. So I did both degrees and I juggle in both worlds. So I admire you for kind of being where you are. Yeah.
Right. I can only imagine how crazily hectic your schedule must be.
It's busy, and because it's so busy, I tend to retract and enjoy my quiet time when I get it.
Yes, absolutely.
When was your last trip to Jamaica?
My last trip to Jamaica was a couple years ago. So unfortunately, I actually wanted to take a trip this past year, but
Yeah.
could not because of COVID. Usually every year my grandmother goes, and she goes now for anywhere from 3 to 6 months at a time. And so usually, one of us in my family will travel with her there. We'll spend a couple weeks, and then someone else will go and pick her up when the time comes. We'll spend a couple weeks and then go home with her. So that's what I was supposed to do, but she had to come back so quickly that I couldn't do that this past year. So my last trip was a couple years ago, and I really do miss
Yeah.
it
You
a
been
lot.
missing it? Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, absolutely.
So your grandmother sounds like she's now based in Connecticut or in the US.
Yes, yes, yes. So
Well, she's back and forth.
she's back and forth a lot. Yes.
So who's still in Clarendon?
So my well, we have a home in Clarendon, so it's always there and available, and
Oh,
open
your
for us,
family.
ready
Mhm.
whenever we want to come. And that's why we're able to go so often, and why we did take advantage of that,
Yeah.
which I love. But my grandfather's sisters are there, and all of my grandmother's cousins. We all live in one lane. We all live in one community. So we always have
Right.
family
So
all
everybody
around
is down
us.
there.
And exactly, exactly. So everyone is there, and all of my cousins and close relatives.
Tell me some of the things about your Jamaican culture that you love the most. And it can be anything from food to music to uh, teachings, sayings, anything that Jamaican culture has done to impact you that you love.
And Jamaican culture has impacted me so 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 much. Even from the way I express myself. My friends, especially those who are Jamaican born, always laugh here because they've never heard someone who was born in the U.S. be able to switch back and forth between patois and American English quite as
Right,
fluidly
right,
as I
right,
do. But it's
right,
just
right.
something that's always been ingrained in me from when I was younger. Being able to code switch so easily. And so the way I express myself, our music, that's so impactful. And I think the older I got, the more I appreciated that. Not just that I love the music for myself, but also, seeing people, no matter what background, race, culture they are, enjoy reggae and really feel the meaning, that comes from the music. That was incredible to me, just to see the
Yeah.
way it had that impact. And I mean, of course, the food. I don't think I could live anywhere where I could not get Jamaican food or be able to have the ingredients I need to cook the food I love.
Exactly. How are you as a cook for
Um,
Jamaican food?
so I don't cook as often as I used to. I used to cook more often when I was living in England. When I was living in England and pursuing my classical acting degree, I would cook very often, and that's when I would cook. A lot for myself. I would cook a lot of curry or brown stew or things like that. But now that I'm not there anymore and I'm more busy, I don't get to cook as often as I used to. But I'm not bad. I'm not bad. My family made sure, I at least know my way around the kitchen, as my grandmother said, turn your hand and make fashion.
Absolutely. This is an interesting question I'm going to ask you, but you said it nicely that there is a spectrum. It's fluid in terms of cultural identity. I know from your story that you have had a lot of exposure to Jamaica. So you are a specific type of exposure. Your other Jamaican Americans that you have met in the US, have you had any negative experiences about how they perceive Jamaica, how they interpret it? And I know the interpretation is up to them, but you know what I mean? Yeah,
Right.
because, or
I
maybe I
will.
should rephrase that. I shouldn't say negative. I should say, what are some of the things that you've seen in other Jamaican Americans in terms of how they present?
Yes. I would say that well, uh, I would say that I've met a lot of people who, because they don't have that experience of being able to go back and see where their parents or family are from. Many of them, like, maybe think they know about the culture and the experience and things like that, but they don't know very much or don't know enough, and you can tell that they want to. And so in some ways, I guess their imitation of whatever culture they are familiar with is a form of flattery. And then there are others who sort of have a negative perception because, like I said, sometimes the difficulty with identity, especially depending on where you grow up here, it can mean that you want to so badly separate yourself from your cultural identity. And I've seen those who, they want to deny their parents' culture. They want to deny, that their parents have an accent, or they're ashamed of where they come from. And so I've seen it all from, wanting to have the experience and wanting to see and experience Jamaica, and then those who want nothing to do with Jamaica because they want to fit in and be like, an American norm, whatever that looks like for Black people in this country.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm glad I got a chance to do was years ago when my mother and family, they were having a huge party to celebrate a birthday. We all went back to Jamaica for a period of time, and all of my family came from Connecticut, from Florida, New York. We have family all over the US. Some came from England as well, and we reunited. I did get a chance to bring one of my friends with me, and it was so meaningful for her, this trip, because her grandmother was actually also from Clarendon, from the same area where my family comes from, and she had never seen or experienced it. And so she had a connection that she never would have thought she had. She felt more at home than she ever thought she would, even though she was spending time, in this part of Jamaica where she had never experienced.
Right. And then she could finally really connect all of the dots for the first time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, it was nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned what you said about you said people growing up. When you said here, you meant in the US, and they want to detach from their Jamaicanness, and some want to cling on to the little that they have. And the flip side happens too, because the Jamaicans who migrate, some of them have such negative experiences based on where they grew up in Jamaica and how they experience Jamaica, that when they leave, they want to try and remove everything.
Yes.
Sadly, some of them accents so thick, not even the Jamaica can't come out of them. But I would normally see them traveling when I'm shopping. So if I'm in like a Macy's and I hear the Jamaican accent, and then of course, initially I want to talk and introduce myself or whatever. And I said, when last you go back? And they would be like, 8 years, 10 years. And I picked up that a lot of these people that I met didn't want to go back.
Yes.
So that's funny. It's almost like the opposite of identity. It's like detachment from identity. I don't know what the term would be, but it's
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I do know a lot of Jamaican born Americans who are like that as well, who just like you said, they want to detach from it, and to the point where I've known people who have lived in the country maybe even 30, 40 years and have never been back. And so their children are what my mom would consider are more Americanized. And so, I would
Right.
always, especially because I'm learning so much about identity, but as a kid, I didn't understand it. So I'd be like, Mom, why is that? Why is it this way? Why is it so different? And I think things like that just made my mother want to more so instill in me, a pride for where I come from, and appreciation, and that I wouldn't always know because of what she was seeing, in the way that other people behaved or would raise their children to detach.
Right. What would you say, Tonille, to anyone who is trying to find their identity? How do you think people can connect? And I'm speaking broadly because identity is way more than cultural identity. We have sexual identity. We have all sorts of different things that we identify with. How do you think people can be true to their identities?
I think that you owe it to yourself to explore as much as you want to. If that means you want to pursue your cultural identity, immerse yourself. If you want to even explore your sexual identity, immerse yourself, whatever that means for you, so that you don't go on with any regrets about the way you form who you are. Because I think most important, more than anything, is being able to know and understand yourself. And I think you can't have peace if you don't know and understand yourself. That's something I've learned over the years.
Oh wow, I felt that in my heart. I love that, and I think I'll piggyback on that too for people who are listening. I would say that exploration of identity doesn't have to be a public one; it can be a private one. And I
Yes.
just tacking that on. 'Cause I think sometimes people think that trying to figure out about yourself requires some kind of bellowing from the hilltops, and it's not necessarily the case. You just have to figure out yourself.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. I think I definitely went through that experience for myself as well. I would say even more recently, even as I got older, in really feeling comfortable and at home in who I am, because I remember getting a lot of questions after I became Miss Supranational Jamaica about, how I'm able to represent the country. So I think many people don't know the rules of pageantry, especially when you're going to represent Jamaica on the international stage.
Mm-hmm.
The rule is that you must have at least one grandparent who was born in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so I more than qualify, being that both my parents were born in Jamaica. But also myself, I sought dual citizenship because it was important to me to not just, enjoy representing the culture and the country with a sash, but also to be able to be a contributing member of society. Whenever I do go back to Jamaica.
Right.
And so that was important. And that's why I decided to act upon that right to do so, being that it's my right as a descendant. And I think that many people with their questions, it felt almost like intrusive for me because I had never been questioned so much about my identity.
Right.
And
Right. They were
I
challenging you
realized,
almost.
yes, yeah, exactly. And I mean, even some of these questions even came from family members. I remember one of my family members asked me quite publicly on my Facebook page, at the announcing of my crowning, one of those questions. And um, I think it's that, people have this idea that, when they come to America, even as born Jamaicans, when they come to America, that they have children. And even though their children live in their home and may go to Jamaica with them, they have this idea that they're somehow less connected from their culture than they are.
Right.
And people have this perception that it's almost like, you turn your back on Jamaica. And so your child is just, you know, American or British or wherever it is that you live. But
Yeah.
it's not quite that case. And I think that, my family has learned that, through growing up and raising kids here in this country, that, their children are many things and they're multifaceted and they have this cultural duality that has given them a shape or has molded them that can't be ignored. So when we explore, sometimes we explore privately, and that's great. And it's been good to do that for myself. And it has given me peace to decide on my own and get to know who I am. And
Yeah.
then, when ready, you can share it. You can share it with others, like I feel I do on an international stage when I compete at these pageants.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. This is even an important conversation for me as a Jamaican-born Jamaican, because I think that even the Jamaican-born people are always going to feel like they have a one-up on you because they live here. It's going to always be that situation. And though it's not a competition, as I had said before, if you were to pound for pound, put some people up against each other and have a conversation about facts about the
Mhm.
country, there will be people who are even non-Jamaican and not even connected to Jamaica who know way more about the culture than some Jamaicans do.
Yes.
So we have to be very careful of how we try to box people into whatever you want to box them into. That said, too, I'm sure that some of the Jamaicans who migrate have a fair sense of guilt too, Because even if
Yeah.
they left for a good reason, that
Mhm.
some part of them may feel a little guilty for having to leave.
Right, right. I think that's definitely true amongst some. I've also spoken to people who have experiences where they moved when they were very young, and so
Yeah,
for them, they almost feel a sense of rejection or a sense of not belonging when they return, especially if it's been a very long time,
yeah,
because people have that idea like you've turned your back on Jamaica, you can't possibly know where you come from, especially having been so young when you left.
yeah,
And then, there are some who maybe say good riddance because a lot of people, I think, also a lot of people talk about the things that are happening, like the most recent events, with the young women in the news who
yeah,
have
yeah,
been experiencing a lot of sexual and domestic violence, especially at the hands of their spouses, and it's frightening, it's scary, and it makes people fearful. And I can totally understand why. But I'm also on the end of knowing that crime happens everywhere and these sorts of things happen everywhere in many of our communities. And so, I
yeah,
don't use that as an excuse to write off, Jamaica and say it's not safe there because this could happen anywhere. Things like this could happen anywhere. But I think it's important right now for us, knowing what we know and with our ability to educate and help others, that we're able to advocate for women like that in those communities where we come from.
yeah. Oh wow. Tonille, you're just saying it as I see it too, and you're nailing it. That I agree, and it's very scary when you're looking at it from the outside in. And then when you're on the inside, it's scary too. But we who are here are still living and functioning every day, doing what we have to do. But it's even scary here for us as well. Um, Tony, let's give me some final words. What would be the final words you would have for our listeners about identity and cultural duality? Is there anything else you want to leave with them? Any other thoughts or gems?
I will say that again, I really just think it's so important for you to explore and get to know yourself for you, for no other purpose than just feeling at peace and at home in your own skin. I think you owe yourself that much. And, whatever you are pursuing, whether that's happiness, peace, pursue it to the best of your ability, however you can. Um, and with that, I just say thank you so much, Mario, for having me. It's been incredible to be here and have this chat with you. I love this podcast because I love how down to earth you are and how comfortable you make your guests seem and feel. So I appreciate that.
Oh wow. Wow. No, thank you as well too. I mean, I I really appreciate having this conversation. And the beauty of the podcast is at the end of the conversations, you always realize how much you learn, you know? So you put a lot of positive thoughts in my mind and things that I will meditate on based on your experience. So thank you for being here. Also want to wish you all the best on
Thank
Miss
you.
Planet Jamaica when you compete as Miss Planet Jamaica later this year. And tell our guests and listeners where they can find you and how they can support you.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll be heading to Cambodia in Asia. I'm very excited in November to compete for the title of Miss Planet International. And you can find me on Instagram at Tonille Watkis. That's Tonille, Watkis, like Watkins, but with no N. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me both places there at that name.
Tonille, thank you so much for being on Talk Truth. It was absolutely my pleasure. And I'm sure we'll have a conversation again in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mario.
You just listened to episode number 59 of Talk Truth. And this is your boy, Mario Evon. What a wonderful conversation with Tonille Watkis. I really enjoyed talking to her about a topic that a lot of people in the diaspora go through, whether you are Jamaican through parentage, Jamaican born who migrated early, or you were born in the US but you have a strong link to Jamaica, all of it can create a great sense of confusion around identity and how Jamaican you are and what you connect with, because you also have another culture in the US or in some other country. So I really appreciated Tonille revealing her experience and being an advocate for it, and showing that even without being physically present all year round in the island, you can still be connected to Jamaica, know the culture, be understanding and aware of the culture, and be a contributor to the culture. So Tonille, thank you for all of the representation that you've given us, and thank you for remaining connected to our culture, because you also had the choice of not remaining connected and finding another path. So we appreciate you so much, and all the best in the pageant later this year. I'm jealous. Who can go Cambodia? Ray. Guys, you know what to do. Follow us on all social media platforms. We are at TLKTRTH, that's Talk Truth without the vowels, but we have some stuff that still has vowels for now, and that would be our website and email address. Website is talktruthja, talktruthja.com, and our email address is talktruthja@gmail.com. Don't forget to leave a comment on this episode in Apple Podcasts, and send it to a friend. Please, we need subscribers. Hit the subscribe button, listen to it in a podcast app, share with someone, show us some love. Let us know that you're listening. I haven't gotten a comment in a minute, so I'd love that. And of course, you just listened to Talk Truth. We have one more episode left for this season, and that's episode 60, and that will be next week. And this is the place where your truth shall become your power and set you free. Until next time, guys.